Something is coming through really fast right now, and I need to slow it down because, hold on, there's a warmth here. A specific kind of warmth, not the general kind, not the abstract hope of connection that people carry around like loose change. This is something more concentrated than that, something with a direction to it. And the first thing I want to say before anything else is that what you've been doing during this period of being alone, this period of not letting anyone in, of keeping a careful distance from that particular kind of closeness. It wasn't avoidance. I want to be really precise about that because I think you've judged yourself for it. I think there have been moments, quiet ones, usually at night, usually when something small triggered the awareness of the empty space beside you, where you asked yourself whether you were protecting yourself or just hiding. That question. You know the one. And the answer is complicated enough that I want to stay here for a moment before we move anywhere else. Because what I'm picking up is someone who didn't choose solitude casually. This wasn't a lifestyle preference. Something happened, maybe one specific thing, maybe a slow accumulation of smaller things where the cost of being close to someone became higher than you were willing to pay again. Not because you stopped wanting closeness, but because you got precise about what closeness actually costs. You saw behind the curtain. You understood something about intimacy that you couldn't unknow. And so you stopped, not dramatically, not with a declaration. You just quietly, gradually, almost without noticing at first, created distance. You became someone who was warm but not available, present but not accessible, someone people could feel drawn to without ever quite being able to reach. And you got good at that, comfortable even. There's a particular skill to being in a room full of people and remaining fundamentally untouchable, and somewhere along the way you perfected it without meaning to. Wait, actually, I want to go deeper here because I don't think I've found the real thing yet. It's not just that you stopped letting people in. It's that you stopped believing, and this is the part I want to name carefully, you stopped believing that what you actually are, the full version, the unedited one, the one that has specific needs and irrational fears and a tenderness you keep extremely private, you stopped believing that version of you would be received well. Not that you're unlovable. I don't think that's the story you tell yourself. It's subtler than that. It's more like you've seen how people love you when you're strong, when you're composed, when you're the version of yourself that requires very little. And some part of you made a quiet calculation. If this is the version they love, what happens if they meet the rest of it? So you never gave them the chance to answer. That's the real celibacy, isn't it? Not just the physical absence of someone, the emotional withholding. The part where you decided that full intimacy, real, exposed, inconvenient intimacy wasn't something you were going to risk again. And I'm not saying that was wrong. I want to be clear about that. That was a reasonable response to something that hurt you, something that cost you more than it should have. You didn't build those walls out of weakness. You built them because you were intelligent enough to understand what you were protecting. But here's what I wasn't expecting to find when I sat with this. The walls are already starting to come down. Not because you decided to take them down. That's the part that's going to catch you off guard. You didn't make a decision. You didn't wake up one morning and choose vulnerability. Something else happened. Someone happened. Um, or something is about to happen that's going to make the walls feel, for the first time in a long time, like more trouble than they're worth. Let me describe this period more specifically, because I think you need to see it clearly. There's a very particular kind of loneliness that belongs to someone who is capable of deep connection but has chosen not to pursue it. It's not the loneliness of someone who can't find love. It's the loneliness of someone who knows exactly what they want and has decided, for reasons that felt very valid at the time, not to go looking for it. You know what that looks like in an ordinary day? You're in a conversation with someone. A good conversation, the kind where ideas move fast and there's real warmth between you, and you can feel the other person genuinely interested in how your mind works. And for a moment, something opens just slightly, just enough that you notice it, a kind of aliveness you'd almost forgotten was available to you. And then almost immediately, something closes again. Not out of fear exactly, more like muscle memory, like a hand that reaches for warmth and then pulls back before making contact. A reflex so fast you've stopped noticing it as a choice. That reflex, that's what I'm seeing begin to slow down. Because what keeps coming through is that there's someone in your proximity or someone moving toward your proximity who doesn't trigger that reflex in the same way. And that's disorienting because you've become so used to the reflex firing reliably that when it doesn't, when someone appears and the usual alarm stays quiet, you don't quite know what to do with that information. It almost makes you more suspicious, doesn't it? Because safe feels unfamiliar, because easy feels like a trap, because someone who doesn't immediately exhaust your defenses is either genuine or very, very good at pretending, and you've met enough of the second kind to be careful about assuming the first. No, wait. That's interesting, because I don't think this person is someone you're suspicious of, actually. I think, and I want to sit with this because it keeps shifting, I think this is someone you already know in some capacity. Not a stranger arriving from nowhere. Someone who has been in your world, maybe on the edge of it, maybe closer than that. And the thing about them, the thing that I keep coming back to, is that they see something in you that you don't currently see in yourself, not in an idealized way, not in the way of someone who has projected a fantasy onto you, in the way of someone who has watched you carefully enough to understand something true about what you are and what you're capable of and what you need, even when you're not saying it. That quality of being seen accurately, not perfectly, not sycophantically, but accurately, is going to feel almost unbearable at first. Because accurate means they see the parts you don't perform, and you're not entirely sure you're ready for that. I want to talk about the physical dimension of this because I think it's important and it doesn't get named enough in readings like this. Your body has been in a certain kind of quiet, not numb, I want to be clear, not numb, but contained, held close. There's a specific way a person carries themselves when they've decided on some level that touch is something they're not currently available for. A slight containment, an invisible perimeter. You probably don't notice it yourself. But if you watched footage of yourself in a room with people you're not intimate with, you might see it the way you position yourself, the way you manage physical proximity. And I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm saying it's there and it's been there for a while. What I keep getting is a sensation of thawing isn't quite the right word, it's more specific than that. It's more like the moment when you've been holding your breath and you finally, without making a decision to do it, exhale. That's what this person is going to do to something in you. Not immediately, not in a single dramatic moment, but there's going to be a specific instant. It could be a look, it could be something they say, it could be something as mundane as them handing you something and your fingers making brief contact where something in your body recognizes them before your mind has caught up. And your mind is going to try to explain it away. Your mind is very good at explaining things away. Don't let it. Not this time. Because what the body knows, it knows without the protection mechanisms your mind has spent years constructing. And the recognition, when it comes, is going to be real. It's going to be worth paying attention to. There's something about the kiss itself, and I want to describe this carefully because, actually, no, let me back up. Before the kiss, there's a conversation. And it's not a romantic conversation in the obvious sense. It's not candlelit. It's not perfectly timed. It's more like you're talking about something else entirely, something ordinary. And at some point, midway through a sentence, one of you stops, and there's a silence that both of you understand differently than every silence that came before it. It's the kind of silence that asks a question without words. And the answer yours is going to surprise you because you're not going to retreat from it. You're going to stay in it. Maybe for the first time in a long time, you're going to stay in a moment of that particular kind of vulnerability without finding an exit. And that staying, that simple, terrifying act of staying present in a moment that asks something real of you, that's where it begins. Not with fireworks, not with a grand romantic gesture, with a moment of stillness between two people where both of them simultaneously decide not to look away. I want to name something about who you are in intimacy because I think it's relevant and I don't think you've heard it said this way before. You are someone who loves with an extraordinary amount of attention, not loudly, not with grand declarations, but in the small, specific ways, remembering the thing they mentioned once in passing, noticing when their energy has shifted before they've said a word, adjusting yourself to give them exactly the kind of space they need without being asked. You are, when you allow yourself to be, one of the most quietly perceptive partners a person could have. And that capacity hasn't gone anywhere during this period of solitude. If anything, it's deepened. The time alone has made you more certain of what matters to you, more specific about what you're willing to accept, more clear about what you're capable of giving and what you need in return. You've done work during this period, even if it didn't look like work from the outside, even if it mostly looked like you living your life and keeping people at arm's length. You were clarifying, slowly, without a roadmap, and the person who is coming or who is already here is going to benefit from that clarification. They're going to get a version of you that is more honest, more grounded, more genuinely present than anyone you've been with before has ever received. That's not a small thing. That's actually the whole thing. There's an image that keeps coming to me, and I want to share it because it feels true. Imagine a room that has been dark for a long time. Not an abandoned room, it's been lived in, things have happened there, it's familiar, but the curtains have been drawn, not to create darkness specifically, just to maintain a certain level of privacy, a certain control over how much light enters. And then someone opens a window, not dramatically, not throwing the curtains wide open, just cracks it enough that a line of light falls across the floor, and the first thing you notice isn't warmth, it's dust. All the particles that were always there, suspended in the air, that you couldn't see until the light came through at that particular angle. And that could feel like an intrusion, like the light is exposing something you'd rather not see. Or it could feel like clarity, like finally being able to see what the room actually contains, what's worth keeping, what's ready to be released. That's the moment you're in. And I think the more I sit with this, I think you're ready for the clarity. Even though it's going to be slightly uncomfortable, even though being seen clearly by someone who matters to you is a different kind of exposure than you've allowed in a long time, you're ready. I want to be careful about saying that with too much certainty because this is your life and you know it better than I do. But something in what I'm picking up says, yes, the timing is right. Something in you has finished the preparation phase without announcing it. The last thing I want to say is about what this connection is going to give you that you stopped letting yourself expect. It's not just companionship. It's not just physical closeness, though that's coming and it's going to feel like exhaling after holding your breath for a very long time. It's recognition, the specific experience of being in the presence of someone and feeling not just liked, not just desired, but recognized, known in the particular inconvenient, unedited way that you actually are. You've been careful for a long time about who gets close enough to know you that way. The walls made sense, the distance was reasonable, the reflex was earned. But this is the moment where all of that careful management begins to soften, not disappear, soften. And that softening isn't loss. It's not you becoming less protected or less yourself. It's you finally being somewhere safe enough to let your shoulders down. That's what's coming, not a fairy tale, not perfection. Someone real with their own complicated interior who sees yours and isn't frightened by it, who moves toward you instead of away when the real version appears. You've waited long enough for that, and I really think it's already beginning. If something in this touched something you've been holding privately, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Even just the part that landed, even one sentence. It matters more than you know.